ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dover City Council meeting for January 12th, 2015. Tonight's council meeting will begin with a invocation led by Reverend Dixon, followed by our pledge to the flag led by Councilman Hare.
So we bow our heads. Our Father and our God, we just thank you for the previous meeting that we've had and the peace of that meeting. Now as we enter to the meeting now at hand, help us to keep the peace, doing the job that we need to do. Give us the wisdom to work through these tough situations. And we're going to give your name and praise. Amen and amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have before you this evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Council President Bonar,
Yes, sir.
I would ask as a courtesy to the many members of the public who are here and who have been here for the Legislative and Finance Committee meeting and are here on the same issue that's being brought forward, that we move item number 11 to item number 4, to new item number 4.
I'll second that.
Moved by Mr. Slavin, seconded by Mr. Hare to move 11 to number 4. Any?
Mr. President?
Yes.
If I could, I'd like to ask that 6A and 6B2 be taken off the consent.
Thank you, sir. We're a little bit ahead of ourselves, but we have an agenda that's been amended, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hutchison, seconded by Mrs. Williams, to approve the agenda as amended. And that is moving 11 to 4 and taking 6A and 6B off the consent agenda. Any questions on the agenda as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now have before us the amended consent agenda. Those items on the agenda are considered routine and non-controversial, and they're marked with an asterisk, and they'll be acted upon by a single roll call vote of council. There'll be no separate discussion of the items unless a member of council so requests, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a separate item. You've noted that 6A and B have been removed from the consent agenda. What's the pleasure on the consent agenda as amended? Mrs. Williams? Mrs. Williams moved for approve.
Second.
Mr. Anderson, second.
No.
Any questions on the agenda? David?
Well, it's just, there was the councilman, the cadet program stuff? Leave it there, okay.
What's the pleasure on the consent agenda as
second.
amended? Well, it's been moved and seconded by Mrs. Williams and Mr. Anderson. Any questions? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
What are we voting on again? Is this the consent
Consent
agenda?
agenda, as
The
amended.
new version? Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 on the agenda this evening is a tribute, number 2014-03, Muriel Schwartz. Madam Clerk, first read the tribute into the record.
A tribute expressing sympathy and condolences upon the passing of Muriel Schwartz. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Dover have been greatly saddened by the death of iconic civic leader Muriel Schwartz, who passed away at the age of 100 on December 18, 2014. And whereas Muriel Schwartz was a strong-minded and astute businesswoman who assumed ownership and operation of her father's theater business, including the Capitol Theater in Dover, following his death in 1942. In an era when women rarely held professional business positions, Muriel and her stepmother, Reba Schwartz, expanded their family enterprise into a regional corporation, which included 12 movie houses spanning from Newcastle County to Salisbury, Maryland. The Capitol Theater became a focal point for the arts and hosted state political conventions in the 1940s and 50s. And whereas Muriel Schwartz fought for the rights of the citizens of Dover, when in 1972 she led a protest against censorship by showing a film not permitted under the city's anti-obscenity ordinance, which led to the repeal of the law. And whereas after selling her movie chain in 1973, Muriel Schwartz founded a Dover art gallery, Muriel's on Lockerman Street in Dover, and in the late 1990s served as an integral member of the Friends of the Capitol Theater, whose efforts resulted in the renovation and reopening of her former theater as the Schwartz Center for the Arts in 2001, which continues to showcase the performing arts and serves as a landmark destination throughout the city of Dover, Kent County, and the state of Delaware. And whereas, as a determined and passionate civic leader, Muriel Schwartz advocated for the foundation of the Greater Dover Committee, bringing community leaders together to improve the quality of life for the residents of Central Delaware. She also served as Kent General Hospital Board's first female president and was instrumental to the success of a multitude of other civic and philanthropic enterprises. And whereas Muriel Schwartz's passion for her community led her to continue to work from her downtown Dover office well into her 90s, and her diligence and hard work exemplify a life well lived. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council extend their deepest sympathy and condolences to the family and friends of Muriel Schwartz, and hope that they will be consoled by the memories of her exemplary life and commendable achievements.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You have before you a tribute that's been read into the record. We made a permanent record of the city of Dover. I'll take a motion on the tribute. So, Mrs. Williams.
Second.
Second by Mr. Slavin. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The tribute is now a part of the permanent records of the city of Dover. Item number 3 this evening is a proclamation, National Mentoring Month. I would invite Mayor Christensen and Steffi Holmes, mentor of the mentor coordinator for South Dover Elementary School, to approach the podium.
Whereas the theme for National Mentoring Month 2015 is Mentoring Works, and the goals for the month are to raise awareness of mentoring, encourage organizations to engage and integrate quality mentoring into their efforts, and recruit individuals to be someone who matters to someone who matters through mentoring. And whereas a mentor provides a caring, consistent presence and devotes time to a young person to help them discover their personal strength and achievement and achieve their potential through a structured and trusting relationship. And whereas research shows that young people who were at risk for not completing high school, but who had a mentor, were 55% more likely to be enrolled in college, 81% more likely to report participating regularly in sports or extracurricular activities, more than twice as likely to say they held a leadership position in a club or sports team, and 78% more likely to volunteer regularly in their communities. Mentors are critical to the social, emotional, and cognitive development of youth, helping them navigate the path to adulthood, set career goals, and connect with industry professionals to find jobs. And whereas mentoring is a proven cost-effective investment, for every $1 invested in mentoring, there's a $3 return to society. And all of the benefits of mentoring serve to link youth to economic opportunity while also strengthening the fiber of our communities. Yet despite these benefits, 1 in 3 youth will reach age 19 without a mentor, constituting a mentoring gap that demonstrates a need for collaboration and resources. Now, therefore, I, Robin R. Christensen, Mayor of the City of Dover, Delaware, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2015 as National Mentoring Month in the City of Dover, and call upon public officials, business and community leaders, educators, and the people of Dover to observe this month by recognizing the importance of mentoring and looking for opportunities to be someone who matters to someone who matters by serving as mentors in our community.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Madam Clerk. Steffi, I'd like to present this certificate and proclamation to you on behalf of the job that you and many mentors throughout our community and throughout the state and the country do for the young folks of America. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to, on behalf of Connecting Generations, which hails from Wilmington, who has a great partnership with the Capital School District, I would like to thank you for this honor. I'm one of 10 mentoring coordinators in the Capital School District that is provided by Connecting Generations. We have a really great support system for mentoring within the Capital School District, and we're very grateful for the support that this proclamation gives to our community and the mentoring that goes on, because it really does make a difference in the lives of the children of our community. I've seen it firsthand as a coordinator and as a mentor of at least 3 or 4 mentees myself over the last 5 years. And I can say from them, thank you for the support that you give. If there are other opportunities that you can share, especially this month, about the opportunity to mentor within our community, we would be so grateful. It is the goal of Connecting Generations to continue to partner with businesses and organizations in Kent County to continue to promote mentoring in our organization to help the youth of our community achieve their goals and really and truly reach their full potential. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the mentoring that you all do. And without your assistance, our students and our young people would be far less better off than what they are. Thank you so much. At the request of Councilman Slavin, we have had an amendment to the agenda. We will move to item number 11 to item number 4. Councilman Slavin.
Thank you, Council President Bonar. Earlier this evening, the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee heard an item, a request from the Chief of Police to seek permission from council to increase the authorized strength of police officers from 92 to 102. There are some additional details in the proposal that I'm sure the chief can answer for those members who weren't present. A number of members of the public were here and have remained here. Thank you for the opportunity to council members to bring this forward in a timely manner earlier in the agenda so that we could take advantage of the people who have expressed an interest to be here. The committee voted by a vote of 4-1 to send this on to committee with its recommendation. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Are there any questions of the police chief? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, are you aware of that if you look at the Realtors website, that the city of Dover has many great attributes for quality of life, but that our overall crime rating says that 97% of the cities are safer than we are?
Did you say that 97% of other cities are safer? No, I didn't say that. 97% of other cities are safer than the city of Dover.
That are now not in our major crimes like murder, but it seems that in our other crimes, we were rated actually in the bottom 5% in crime rate.
I don't think our crime rate's nowhere near that low, but you're just helping the cause of getting 10 more officers from what you just said.
I would ask the audience not to applaud during our deliberations. Any other questions of the chief? Mr. Anderson.
Chief, I do have a question. I have 2 concerns. One is we have to have a strong public safety presence and process. The other concern is that we have to have a strong fiscal process. Is there concerned with not with where we want to go. We're in complete agreement with that. But the timetable change is what sort of concerns me a bit. Why aren't we phasing this in over a year and a half as opposed to over 6 months?
We've lost 14 officers over the past 3 years. So we've already lost a lot of experience. Within the next year, we can lose up to 23 more officers. That's 25% of the police department. I am trying to make sure that we're not behind the 8 ball, so we're prepared for the future. That's why we need the 10 officers as soon as possible. I thought I was being fair to the city and the budget by asking for 5 in March when the State Police Academy starts, and asking for another 5 in September when the State Police Academy reconvenes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Hutchison, then Mr. Persa.
To our city manager and finance director, if we were to approve 5 now for the March class, and then 5 more in September, what would that mean for a tax increase in order to cover all expenses? And I'm talking not only the expenses of salaries and benefits, but also cars and such.
Mr. Hutchison, I think the chief was on record as saying the FY15 impact is about $160,000 roughly. The real impact kicks in FY16, which will be the next budget discussion, and it's the budget that we've begun preparing now. Based on the preliminary discussions Ms. Mitchell and I had, we would say that a 5-cent tax increase would be necessary to cover the full implementation of what the chief has requested.
And to follow up with that question, I'd like to ask our city solicitor, do we have the authority to go ahead and approve a 5-cent tax increase tonight to cover this request?
Mr. Hudson, I think it's on the agenda, so I believe you could consider it. It's on the legislative and Finn report that
Okay,
you have.
thank you.
So that I'm clear on this, Mr. Rodriguez, since it is on as a Legislative and Finance Committee agenda item, and it affects the funding for the remainder of this fiscal year, we do have the authority to raise taxes tonight.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, then Mr. Hutchison.
Mr. Persa was.
I'm sorry, Mr. Persa, you're next, then Mrs. Williams.
It was a follow-up to one of Mr.
Maybe you
Anderson's.
speak into the microphone, please.
It was a follow-up to one of Mr. Anderson's questions regarding the chief's response to the number of retirees. I think the chief had indicated there's about 23 or so that were eligible to retire. Have those 23 indicated they are confirmed in writing that they are retiring, or are they just eligible by virtue of reaching, whether it's seniority or time and grade or anything like that? Is that the basis of the 23? Or have they
Correct.
told you they're retiring?
No, they're eligible to retire.
Okay. All right, so just eligibility, is that the city, or does the police department have a policy in place that requires a certain amount of heads up in the event that if all 23 are to retire, do they got to give the city notice in writing, I'm retiring on June 1st, August 1st, December 1st, or anything like that?
It's customary to give 2 weeks. In order to get their retirement from the state, they're supposed to do it within 45 days. But if somebody offers you a job, usually you give 2 weeks and you go to your new job. And that's what we've been experiencing.
Okay.
And also, if I may add, we do have a mandatory retirement of age 55 and a mandatory retirement after 30 years of service. In 5 years from now, 9 officers will have to retire.
How many of the 23 are hitting, I think you said 55, how many of the 23 hit 55 in the next year?
I think 2.
2?
I'm not positive, but I think it's 2.
Okay.
And 9 within 5 years.
Okay, 2 within the next year.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Mrs. Williams, then Mr. Slavin.
This is for Mr. Koenig. Mr. Koenig, if this tax hike is passed tonight, when would it go into effect?
My opinion, it would be as part of the fiscal 16 baseline budget. So the FY16 budget would be based on a.
Well, instead of saying 5 cents, 6 cents, which is very confusing to people, Give me the average, the mean average of a home in Dover.
I don't have that tonight.
Well, do it on 100,000 then, or 75,000.
It's
Or 100.
33.78 cents per $100 of assessed value.
So it's $3.30 some a thousand.
Yes,
Okay. Is that right?
roughly.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is we would absorb the loss this fiscal cycle, and that would be able to be done, I would suspect, fairly easily, since it's only 100 and some thousand.
I would not say fairly easily, but
Well, we could do it.
the general fund budget is roughly $37 million. So we would have to absorb approximately $160,000 of additional expense in FY15.
Okay. And then we would roll it into you would roll these figures into the next budget cycle, so we would be able to approve when we approve the FY16 budget, this would be rolled into it. If it passes tonight.
If you were to adjust the
Right.
effective rate tonight, we would use that as the baseline start for FY16 for revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Slavin?
Thank you.
Mr. Hutchison?
I'm just kind of interested in the fairness of the numbers here as we present this. Let's present a fair argument. So each penny of tax rate raises how much revenue?
The last budget, we said $316,000.
Okay, so 316 times 5 is approximately 1.5 million.
$5 million.
All right. The highest number I heard on this was $966,000, and that was for fiscal 19. So why is it that we would need 1.5 million next year?
There are additional costs that are not captured in the calculation related to insurance, vehicle maintenance, vehicle purchases, because the chief, what he basically said was they were going to hold off for at least a year on purchasing vehicles. So, when asked tonight, if I had to give you a number, it would be 5 cents.
I understand. We're all kind of up against the wall on this.
Right.
Very short time to put this together.
Back of the envelope.
Right. And similarly, on process, I'm interested in making sure we all understand that the issue fairly is that a vote to load this kind of expense into the balance of this budget, we've said we can absorb it with some pain, but we can absorb it. To load the expense into the fiscal 16 or the fiscal 17 budget simply becomes an expense that we have to deal with during our budget process. Correct? And the assumption that you need to raise taxes is predicated on the assumption that all of the other revenues the city have remain level, all of the other expenditures the city has remains level, that we've made no other additional adjustments, and therefore, ipso facto, we're going to raise the tax rate. And I'm not there with that logic. I don't think that the two are conjoined like that. I think if we want to deal with this issue, we all understand the fact that what we're doing is front-loading a budget that's already under some stress for fiscal 16 and fiscal 17. But that's where we are. The city is also under stress in other areas, and one of the areas is crime. And that's what we're trying to balance out here. So I just wanted to kind of raise that issue. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way the tax rate can be raised is by a separate vote of council at the conclusion of the budget process to set the tax rate for a fiscal year. And that vote takes place in May after the budget has been adopted. Is that correct?
I don't know if that's the only time that it can be done. I think council can adjust revenues when they so choose to adjust revenues, but you have to have a start date as to when that would go into effect. So you're right. The general fund budget, as we've discussed every year that I've been city manager, is under heavy stress. We remedied the general fund gap last year. We presented a budget at roughly a $2.2 million gap. We were requesting a 7.22 cent increase in the property tax rate. And we filled that hole by transferring an additional $2 million every year in the 5-year forecast from the electric fund. And this is it's a $1 million increase to the baseline budget of the general fund. Roughly the police department budget, I think, is around $12 million a year. So it's about an 8% increase to just the police department budget. So it would take the baseline general fund budget right off the top from roughly $38 million to $39 million. before we even get into discussions about what's important. And I'm not saying that this is not important. We all agree.
I appreciate you.
We all agree.
Sympathetic to your concerns.
We all agree that this is important, that security is an issue. If people don't feel safe, then it creates problems for us everywhere else. But we cannot simply absorb $1 million in other functions of the general fund and maintain the same level of service. So when I come before you in May with a budget, if I have this type of expense added to it without a real way to pay for it, it puts me at a significant disadvantage of developing the FY16 budget. As much sympathy as there may be in this chamber tonight for the request is not paid for if we don't do any type of action tonight. It will be an unfunded request as of July 1. So in July 1, if things get tight, those officers that are in the academy have no guarantee, which they may never have any guarantee, that their position would be funded when they get out of the academy. So
But that's the case for every fiscal year.
it is.
That's the case for every employee in city government for every fiscal year. And all I'm saying is, let's be fair about the information you're putting out there. You don't want to scare people into.
I'm not trying to be unfair about it.
And I'm not saying you're doing that.
But my point
there's a bigger
is that-
audience than just the 8 people who are voting on this.
My simple point is that the city has traditionally funded the baseline budgets of the year before. That's traditionally where we've started things to roll back or consider. But this is a new request, and it's a request mid-year. So it's not like other requests that we've seen, especially since the magnitude is 5 this budget, 5 next budget.
Right, and I think, the last comment I'll make for now anyhow is that I think we've all done a great job, over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years of kind of trying to balance this budget as best we can by deferring as much as we can. And what we're hearing and what we're seeing tonight is the result of deferring for too long. All right, and this is public safety. You can bet there's equal pain on the infrastructure side of town, with public works side of town, with staffing levels in other departments. We've done all we can to move the P around and the shell around, and it's time. It's time to get on with it now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Mr. Hutchison.
Mr. President, thank you, and certainly to each and every law enforcement officer here tonight. I want all of you to understand, when I look at this request, December 1 this past year, we didn't even know the police chief was coming forward with this request. And all I'm saying to each and every one of you, public safety is number 1 in this city, has always been number 1. When you make a request, we take it very seriously. And the track record over the past years proves it. And whether it's the police department or fire department, when you have needs, you're going to get to support this police department, what you need. However, when I look at this request, in fairness, our city manager and finance director, as you have heard from tonight, is totally caught off guard. And they're the ones that got to find it. We can sit around this table and make decisions, but at the end of the day, we got to find it. And all I'm saying is, if we go ahead tonight and approve 10 officers, then you go ahead and recommend and support a 5-cent tax increase to cover it. And then there's not an issue. But as far as I'm concerned, this is not the way you run a business. You don't have no knowledge of this on December 1 and turn around now, a month later, month and a half, and we're looking at $1 million increase now. So all I'm saying to you, if we are going to increase the number of officers, and if the chief says he needs them, fine, we'll support him. But I'm also here to say, I want the support of a 5-cent tax increase to take care of it.
Mr. Harry.
I guess when you look at all this, first of all, to address something Mr. Hutchison said, if I remember correctly, Chief Hosfeld told us in 2011 we needed more officers. And in our infinite wisdom, we said no. So this isn't a surprise that this is coming at this point, to me anyhow. I mean, it's been coming up. I do, and I'm sure that a lot of the officers know that, I'll do ride-alongs. I do different things. When the fire department needed repelling gear, I went and repelled off of the power plant just see what it was like.
That's scary in and of itself.
That's scary in itself. Okay? But I do ride-alongs, and I will honestly say this last ride-along that I did was probably the first time that I had a little trepidation with everything that went on. I don't do it on a Tuesday afternoon. I do it Friday nights and Saturday nights, all night, because they were down 5 officers. And it made you really think. It made you think, wow, what happens if? What happens? I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. We've got to address this, and I don't think we need to vote on a tax increase right now. That's saying that nothing else is going to get cut this year. Or as Mr. Slavin said, the revenues are all going to be down. And heck, back many years ago when we created our power plant, it was created to keep the tax base low. You never know. We might get a recommendation from our city manager to decrease our electric rates again so we can not have more money. Or hire another person in economic development. Or hire an assistant city manager for 6 figures. Who knows what could come up? I mean, things that are probably more important. So I don't think voting on this tonight is out of line, and I don't think we need to, we can say, yeah, there could be a 5-cent tax increase, but I don't think we need to approve that or vote on that tonight. Because what could happen when the planning gets started? What could happen when the budget is brought to us? You know, sure, the general fund's never been able to support itself. That's why we have the electric fund. That's why it was created way back in the day. So I don't think this is, and changing it from a September to a March, what's the difference? We're just prolonging what Chief Husfeld brought up in 2011. And if we have to raise the taxes in June, we have to raise the taxes. Because the first time someone close to somebody in this room gets assaulted or worse, then we say, well, it would have cost this amount of money to save that life. Right. So I support it, and I think we should pass it tonight.
Any other comments? Mr. Anderson.
Mr. President, I do disagree with the idea that it would be if there were a tax increase, it would be 5 cents. I do not see that in the numbers. At the most, I would see a 3-cent increase. And I know personally there would be other areas that I would also recommend cutting in the budget cycle as well. But it is but I don't see how we'll do this without some measure of a tax increase. There is going to have to be one, and we'll have to decide as a city if that's the type of investment we want to make in our public safety. So I think one of the best ways to achieve that is to ensure that we do have a public safety fund and make sure that the people know that the tax money is going there, and I think the people will support it.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any other comments from members of council? Mr. Dixon, speak into your microphone, sir.
I believe that, Mr. Hare, you're right. We should get some type of idea tonight exactly what the tax will be. Put it to a vote and let it go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Perza.
Question now. Everybody keeps talking about tax increase. What is the tax increase that we're supposed to be voting on tonight if it's not in front of us? Do we know?
That is entirely up to you as members of council to pose in the form of a motion.
Well, I guess where I'm getting, what are we voting on tonight? Is it just the author? Is it the green light to go ahead and start planning for adding officers, or are we actually voting on the tax increase tonight?
It would take a motion to approve the number of officers being changed from 92 to 102. With the stipulation that 5 be hired in March for the March Academy and 5 be hired for the September Police Academy. Attendant to that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Solicitor, it would take a motion, if you so desire, to increase the tax rate by whatever number you want the motioner would want to make to fund those positions. Whether you want it effective July 1st, whether you want it effective immediately to fund the position between now and the end of the fiscal year, that is a motion that you on the floor will have to craft. Mr. Slavin, I saw you raise your hand.
Mr. President, finish.
I mean, in theory, can we add 100 officers but fund none of them until we determine where the money comes from? Or do we have to sit here tonight and come up with a tax plan with doing this?
That's entirely up to you as members of council. My recommendation to you is that you find a way to fund this, all right? And by whatever number you want to come up with. I will say this, and I wasn't going to say much about this. Tonight's discussion is emblematic of what we have gone through over the last 5 years. We have known for 5 years that at some point in time, we're going to need a tax increase. Now, the chief's bringing this to us just happens to have happened at the time that it happened. And I don't think that it was by design. I don't think that it was in any event nefarious in the way that it was brought forward. I think he's just up against the deadline to get people into the academy, to try to get people trained and ready to be out on the street in time for the next cycle, so that he will have a full complement of officers and he will have people ready on the street to meet the eventual retirement of the people who are on board. He's only trying to make sure that the police force's staffing is sufficient to meet the needs of the police force in the long run. There's no question in any of our minds about the desired strength of the police department and the fact that it needs to be increased. The question is whether we want to fund it for the remainder of this year, force the city manager to cut for the remainder of this year, or whether we want to combine these two next fiscal year, the rest of this fiscal year and all of next fiscal year to fund the whole package. And that's going to be up to you all as members of council to make that motion from the floor. Councilman Hutchins.
Mr. President,
Then Mr.
I would
Slade.
hope council would consider, if in fact the addition of 5 officers for the March class, the academy, taking the authorized strength of the Dover Police Department from 92 to 97. And at the same time, we increased the taxes 2.5%. And in September, we changed that authorized strength from 97 to 102 with an additional 2.5% increase to cover the future cost of 10 new officers to the Dover Police Department.
Mrs. Williams.
Basically,
Mr. Slavin, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
basically, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Go.
Basically, what we're talking about, if we make a decision tonight to add the officers, we're talking about an unfunded liability. And I realize that we have the task is not as daunting this year as it is next year. But I am concerned that we would proceed with an unfunded liability, because we are halfway through this fiscal year. We do not know what's going to happen. We do know we have an aging infrastructure. We do know we have other services in the city that are at their maximum level of performance under the current restraints, budgetary restraints. So while, you know, I'm a fiscal conservative and don't normally ever vote for a tax increase, I find it very irresponsible for us to add these police officers and on the back of an unfunded liability. I think we have to fund it, or we're not doing justice to our staff and to our citizens.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Mr. Slavin.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams, for your comments. I would just kind of gently push back and say that we approve unfunded liabilities all the time as a council.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do.
Every contract that's brought forward that's multi-year and we approve is an unfunded liability in the out years, that other than the fiscal year that we're in. Every service contract that we bring everything that's brought here that's more than 1 year is an unfunded liability. So it's not like we're establishing a precedent here. I'm going to play my part as the committee chair of Legislative Finance and Administration Committee, with the understanding that we've got to start somewhere. So I'm going to move that we accept the recommendation of the committee and grant permission to increase the authorization strength of police officers from 92 to 102.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Slavin, seconded by Mr. Hare, to increase the authorized strength of the Dover City Police Department from 92 to 102. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Anderson.
Definitely a question on the motion, Mr. Chairman. Timeframes were not included in that motion. What's the timeframes on that?
It would be based on the request from Chief Burnett, 5 in the March class and 5 in the September class.
Thank you.
Does that clarify your question,
That
Mr.
does.
Anderson? Mr. Hutchison.
I would like to ask the maker if he'd be willing to accept an amendment and to have a 2.5-cent tax increase to handle the request that you're making from now until the end of this budget cycle, and then a 2.5% increase after this budget cycle.
Yeah, although I'm not in favor of it, I would allow the amendment in the spirit
Thank you.
of democracy.
All right, we have an amendment that would add 2.5 cents, or 2.5 cents, or
2.5 cents.
2.5 cents effective for the remainder of this budget cycle, and a 2.5 cent increase for the budget cycle that begins on July 1st. That is the amendment. Any questions on the amendment?
Mr. I got a question about it. I have a question about it.
Go ahead.
Are you proposing that we assess an additional tax between now and the close of our fiscal year at 2.5 cents?
I'm asking for a 2.5 cents now to cover the initial request.
Right, and what I'm asking, can I?
Absolutely, open dialogue.
And I'm asking, how would you collect that? How do you propose that be
Well, I
collected?
turn to my city manager and
I don't think we were discussing doing an additional billing, so that would be 2.5 cents added to the 33.78 for FY16.
And then when would the other 2.5 cents, excuse me, be added?
I guess the way he did that is FY16, but we could bring the second half as part of the FY16 budget request.
But
Thank you, Mr.
We
Slavin.
don't build, we wouldn't send out a separate
That's why I
tax
raised the
billing in the
question.
middle of the year because that would create a massive amount of confusion, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Mr. Persa.
I had a question for the maker of the original motion, which I believe was Mr. Slavin, not on the amendment. So that, I think the question is when we're when we're adding 10 members to the Dover Police Force, which is the basis of the application anyway, we need 10 people because there's 23 retirements coming. When the retirements start, are we going back from 102 back down to the 92, since the whole purpose of this is to replace retirees? Or is this basically we're increasing the force and adding $2 million to the budget?
this was part of the discussion earlier during the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee.
Well, to the extent that the
people who
city's
are retired,
watching, nobody knows that.
I understand, but the people who are retiring, there already is base funding and there already is authorization to replace them. My understanding, and Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the additional 10 positions would allow those positions to be replaced more quickly than the 18-month period it takes to take a brand-new officer and get them up to speed. Is that fair?
So this is not to replace retiring officers. We're just adding 10 to the force.
Correct.
And then once we get up to 102, as the numbers drop, we're going to replace them as well. So we're going to stay at 102 from this point forward. Is that the plan?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So
Chief, if you're speaking, speak into the mic.
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. Just want to be sure everybody understands.
Any further questions? Mr. Hare.
A couple things. First of all, there hasn't been a second on the amendment.
No, there hasn't.
What if we don't need the tax increase in June? Then what? We're going to do it anyhow?
I have no problem. If you look at,
I mean, that's one question. And then the other thing I'd like to say is, I hope we have this much discussion over the other items that'll come up in the budget and scrutinize them, as one of my pet peeves has always been, that we spend almost $1 million for a revenue-neutral tax assessment. That right there, if we didn't do the revenue-neutral tax assessment, might have funded this. Who knows? Never know.
90.
Thank you.
Point of order, I think you need to
I'm
say.
getting ready to address that. There is an amendment that has been proposed. There has not been a second.
Second.
There is a second by Mr. Dixon. Now we are in proper order. So now we will, Mrs. Mitchell.
I just have a question for Mr. Rodriguez. I know during the budget process, we publish the potential tax increase. Is there a public hearing notice required?
To whom are you addressing?
Mr. Rodriguez?
No, I view it as an emergency situation. If council votes to add the 10 members, and you could do a tax increase at that time, tonight. But the effect of it, you've already discussed that. I think you're going to have to do it for the coming tax year, as you would do it in June of this year. And it's going to have to be, I don't know how you can do 2.5% and then come back and do 2.5% in September. I think you're going to have to do 5% in June.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Slavin, then Mr. Hare.
Yeah, thank you. That was the point I was going to clarify, was that it sounds to me as if the maker of the amendment, really what he's proposing is a 5-cent increase in fiscal, to the tax rate in fiscal 16, which wouldn't be enacted until July 1st.
Mr. Hare.
Okay. Following, trying to maybe I get it, Mr. Persa, but let me see if what I'm sure we're voting on. So tonight we're going to vote on a definite possible maybe tax increase in June.
No, if we vote on it and it passes, we have one.
That's what I say, a definite possible maybe we need.
No, it's not possible, it's not maybe.
No, that's silly.
It's definite.
It's silly to pass a tax increase we don't know if we even need it.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I cannot support the tax increase proposed. I do not believe it is necessary. I do not believe that the numbers that are given back that size of a tax increase. It is just unnecessary. I think that we deal with these in the context of the budget. That's where that discussion needs to be taking place, where all priorities will compete and where the public will get their hearing on those issues. The issue tonight is authorization of those levels and setting priorities for the budget for public safety. It is not addressing the other issues of the budget. So a tax vote is not necessary for tonight. In fact, considering that there has been no notice for that to the public, I think the public would be ill-served to have one.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. There is a motion and a second on the floor for the proposed taxes to cover the funding for these positions. From a procedural standpoint, that constitutes an amendment to Mr. Slavin's motion to increase the force strength to 102 from its current 92. So the proper procedure is to vote on the amendment first and then on the authorized strength. Mr. Persa.
Since we're talking about the amendment on taxes, and knowing that the last two budget cycles we've gone through a process of having a budget and proceeding to cut it, to trim it back, to get it to a manageable form that the city would approve, what else is coming in the next 6 months as the budget cycle starts for the spring? Because the whole conversation is going to start again. If we're basically adding $1 million or 1.5, whatever the number is for police officers or for public safety at that point, what other projects are coming that we're going to have to sit here in 3 months and have to go through again and trim? Because I don't want to add things, then take them away 3 months. Because you can't basically, once you add the officers and you put them in an academy, you really can't take that out.
Right.
So we're locking ourselves into commitments at this point. So what were we planning on that is not going to happen now because we spent $1 million on this? Do we have that
I think
information
that was my
yet?
point, is I don't want to be
Is
I don't
this
want to
better
take this
suited to having
expense.
this as part of a larger budget discussion in April, May, June, as for if we're going to expand the public safety component of the city, which probably there's public sentiment for, based on kind of my feedback. I think the public sentiment's going to be based on how much are you taking from the public. And you can add 100 officers if you want, as long as the public backs that. 10 is going to cost X, but 10 is also going to take away Y from other aspects of the city providing services. And I'm not comfortable until we know what all the X, Y, and Z's are, until we know what's going on tonight. Unless we just want to say is we want 10 officers, everything else just falls into place and defines what it is. But I guess the hesitancy I got, or the concerns I have, is we're reacting to a newspaper article that was put in place without having the numbers to back it up. And if I have difficulty explaining this to people in Crossgates and Mayfair as to, I get the public safety. I can say the city is concerned, we want to be safe in the streets and the businesses and things like that. I get that. But if I can't explain how the numbers are going to work and what we're giving up for next year, I have a hard time signing off on it today until I understand what it is. And I think we're running this through a process in a matter of a week, 2 weeks, without explaining it to the public. And I understand there's people who came to the Leg Fin meeting, but there's 36,000 people in the city. They're going to basically, if we raise taxes on them 5% or 2.5%, whatever the number is tonight, there's going to be 36,000 people who are going to be asking a lot more questions tomorrow as to why was this done, what impact is this going to do, and until we know the answers to that, my gut is we need to look at this a little further. Not saying we're not going to do it, but I think we need to get an idea of what we're really spending, how much it's going to cost, and what are we offsetting it against in the future. Or we offset against nothing. We do everything we want, but it's not going to be a 5% increase. We're going to be raising taxes, whatever it is, 20%. As long as everybody's happy with that and we understand where we're going with this. I just feel like we're kind of doing this in piecemeals. We're trying to take an item that is granted important, and I get it. I appreciate that, but until I know how it fits the puzzle, what we're doing in 15, 16, I'm not sure we're there yet. And we've only had 2 weeks of reading this in the newspaper to kind of figure that out. Regardless of the 2011, I wasn't here in 2011 to kind of follow it. I know what the city police force has been and things like that, but to the 36,000 people in the city who don't follow this on a daily basis, I think there's a little bit more information that's got to come out.
Thank you, Mr. Perza. Any other comments from members of council? Any other questions? Now I have before you an amendment. Mr. Dixon, you got
Not
a
a
question?
question.
So not yet.
Thing of it is, you plan for 10 officers. You need to plan for the money to pay those officers. If it take 2 and 5%, if we do it at the whole thing of 5%, we need to do it. Rather than wait till the last minute, and then some of the officers can't get out of school because we don't have the money to pay.
We're not.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Harris.
We're not really waiting to the last minute. I think what Mr. Purvis is saying, or what I was saying, is we don't know if we need to increase it that much until we get all the numbers and all the figures. So if we have to increase it, yeah, we will. But we won't know what we need to increase it until we get all the budget numbers together and we have everything. Like Mr. Anderson said, if it's just $1 million, we don't need to increase it 5 cents. We need to go 3 cents. And it won't affect anything this year, as was said earlier in the Leg and Fin meeting. If this was something for Calpine, we'd find the money.
Right. So let's find the money now.
All right. From a procedural question, I'm going to call it, or from a procedural standpoint, I'm going to call the question on the amendment.
Just the amendment?
That's
Just the amendment. This is the amendment as presented by Mr. Hutchison, which will increase taxes 2.5 cents now and 2.5 cents July 1st.
Council President, I'd prefer the clarification that we received from the solicitor, which says this would effectively just raise the tax rate by 5 cents for fiscal 16.
Will the
In
maker of the
reality,
motion,
that's exactly what's happening.
will the maker of the motion agree to that language?
I think it's just a clarification.
But then I'll go ahead and make the motion, we increase it by 5 cents.
Thank you, sir. And the second agrees. Okay.
Thank you.
The motion before you is to increase the tax rate by 5 cents to pay for the additional officers.
Mr.
Anderson.
Mr. President, I would add an amendment to say that that measure be voted upon in the April election, be added to the ballot as a non-binding referendum in the April election.
I'll second that motion.
So we now have two amendments.
Well, that's an amendment to the amendment.
That's an
Yes.
amendment to the
So
amendment.
we'll go with the amendment to the amendment first, right, Mr.
That's
President?
correct. There has been an amendment to the amendment and a second that would add the question to a referendum to take place on Election Day, which is April 21st, 2015, as to whether or not taxes should be increased by 5 cents.
Non-binding.
We're unclear on the amendment,
Non-binding.
non-binding,
Just a,
It would say up to.
up to 5 cents. Any questions on the amendment to the amendment? Go ahead, Mr.
just
Slavin.
a comment, not a question, that we have before us all wrapped up in one, 3 very different issues.
Yes.
All right, and one vote does not mean you don't support the others, okay? So someone, if they wanted to support the request of the chief, could say that. They could also say no to a tax increase and yes or no to a referendum. But the underlying question that we're going to get to eventually is the
There's 10
request of
men,
the chief.
10 officers, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Slavin, for the clarification. Any further comments or questions?
I would, if Mr. Anderson would make, the 5 cents would be up to 5 cents for public safety.
For public safety, yes. And it would all be dedicated to that public safety.
Everybody clear for the amendment to the amendment? All right.
This is like poison ivy, Mr.
Yes,
President.
yeah, it is indeed, and I'm getting ready to scratch it. All right, so the amendment to the amendment is on the floor, it's before you. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
No.
Mr. Berza?
Is this the referendum question?
Yes.
No.
Now, this is the amendment to the
Mr.
amendment.
Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
No.
Mr. Bowman?
No, motion fails. Now, before you is the tax increase. Tax increase would go to would be approved at 5 cents to fund the hiring of additional police officers. In the state's 6 roads. I remind you that this council just needs a simple majority. Any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Berza?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
No.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
No.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion fails. Now we have before you the Finance Administration Committee recommendation to increase the strength of the Dover Police Department from 92 to 102. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Berza?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, motion carries 6-1. Make that 7-1, I'm sorry. All right, item number...
Mr. President, I move that we accept the report of Legislative Finance Administration.
Second that motion.
Thank you, that was my next question.
We can move on to item number 12 now on the agenda.
That's correct. Move on to item number 12, go ahead, sir. We need a second to accept the motion, or accept the motion to accept the leg and pin report.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
To accept Leggett
Whoa,
Finn.
whoa, wait a minute, whoa, stop. Didn't some of these other items get pulled off of this for discussion? Are we
From a
not?
different Leggett Finn committee.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye to accept the Legislative and Finance Committee report.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, we have before us item number 6D, which you, huh? 4. But Tim asked. All right, item number 4 first. Public hearing and final reading of proposed ordinance 2014-24, rezoning request for properties located 21 and 27 Salisbury Road and 983 Forest Street, owned by Faithwork LLC. Properties are currently zoned CPO, Commercial and Professional Office, and Corridor Overlay Zone 1, and the proposed zoning is IO, Institutional and Office, and subject to Corridor Overlay Zone 1. First reading of the proposed ordinance was accomplished during the council meeting November 24, 2014. Copies are available at the entrance to council chambers. First, I'll entertain a motion to consider the final reading of the ordinance 2014-24 by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption. All those in favor, Madam Clerk. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2014-24, amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the city of Dover by changing the zoning designation of properties located at 21 Salisbury Road, 27 Salisbury Road, and 983 Forest Street. Mrs. Townsend.
Thank you. This is a rezoning request for 3 parcels. 2 are located on Salisbury Road, just north of the Subway restaurant, and the other is located on Forest Street, just east of the Subway restaurant. And that the Forest Street property connects to the other 2 properties. The properties are currently zoned CPO, Commercial and Professional Office, and subject to the Corridor Overlay Zone. The applicant, they're C1A and subject to the Corridor Overlay Zone, and the applicant has requested a zoning of of IO, also subject to the Corridor Overlay Zone. The purpose of the rezoning is to allow for a youth group home, which is not permitted in the commercial zone. So the institutional and office zone would allow that. The parcels as they exist do not conform to the bulk standards of the zoning ordinance, specifically the lot width and the minimum lot area requirements of 10,000 square feet and 100 feet in width. That was noted in the review by the Planning Commission. Following a public hearing on December 15th, where no members of the public spoke with regard to the public hearing, the Planning Commission recommended to City Council that the rezoning request be approved as submitted. There was 1 dissenting vote on that, and that was due to the non-conforming bulk standards of the parcel to the south, the parcel on Forest Street. You have the DAC report that has all of the other agency comments, as well as the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting on December 15th. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I had read the comments asked by the commissioners and various things like that. In English, what's the parcel C? Why is that the key element of this plan? Is that, can it not happen without parcel C?
According to the applicant, they need all 3 of the parcels to make this work. So yes, they've indicated that they do need all 3 to make the.
What is?
Mrs. Townsend, could you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
What is parcel C for? Is that access, like ingress, egress?
It would actually, each parcel has a residence on it. They were all built as residences. One of them had been converted to an office previously, but the Forest Street parcel and the northernmost Salisbury Road parcel are both currently residential parcels.
All right, so there's no construction, they're not going to,
No, they
Do
intend
some
to
uniform
use
parking lot or
the
anything?
structures that are there. There's enough parking behind the one that has been used as an office in the past.
Any other
Okay.
questions? Mrs. Williams?
Mrs. Townsend, I've read this, and I run a group home for children and
Yes.
youth, and I still don't understand.
Okay?
Is this campus going to be broken up by subway?
Yes, the subway,
Yeah,
they bookend subway, yes.
I can't.
But they join at the rear.
I can't imagine running a group home, particularly for emotionally impaired kids, with a business in the middle of the campus. It's asking for trouble, big trouble, on both sides, the business side and the group home side. And for that reason, I can't support this.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Any other questions of staff or comments? This does require a public hearing. I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the proposed rezoning? Who would like to speak in favor? If so, come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Edward Sedafani, Bonnie Court, Smyrna. I'm the State Director for Psychotherapeutic Services. We have a long, proud history in the state of Delaware. We provide many jobs here. We provide services, mental health services for both adults, but our primary services are for children. We are one of the few mental health providers that emphasizes Kent County and the city of Dover. Many companies prioritize up north. We focus on right here in Kent County. I don't want to seem crass by dovetailing onto the prior conversation that was had here, but we're talking about public safety, we're talking about budget. Public safety starts with our children, starts with providing them with services that keep them out of Chief Burnett's force's radar, that keep them out of the hospital, and those are our most expensive options as well. So by providing these kind of services, we have the potential to reduce crime. We also have the potential to reduce stress on the budget. Psychotherapeutic Services has a long, proud history of providing these types of services. We know we can do it effectively. This campus, if we can, let's look at to see with the timer. This campus environment, each of the houses is staffed, 2 staff at a minimum for each house. They are joined at the rear lot, which is also going to be our recreational area, basketball court, all that good stuff. We know we can do this. This is the best spot to do this. The buildings fit the purpose that we're trying to do, and we know that we can do this safely, effectively, and to the benefit of the city, and we can bring a lot of good paying jobs into the city as well, approximately 40 good paying jobs. And I would like to emphasize, because this did come up in the planning meeting, that working with Department of Prevention Behavioral Health Services, we do need all 3 lots to make this happen. We cannot do it with just the 2. What they want, their desires, require all 3. And so I would ask you to take the near unanimous decision of the Planning Committee and approve it so we can get started providing services for these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak in
Mr.
favor of this?
President.
Question for Mr. Perza and Mr. Hutchison.
Oh, yeah, please start.
Mr. Perza.
I guess probably Ms. Williams, my comments were not necessarily negative towards the applicant. I think the services that they want to offer in the city are good. I don't think anybody's opposing that. But the one comment about you don't want to see kids in the hospital, we don't want to see them in the hospital either. And if the parcels aren't conforming on Route 8, we want to see kids running out in the street and get hit. And if the city code says this type of facility shouldn't be in this location for whatever the reasons are, and they're asking us to eliminate that restriction and allow it, I'm just asking why. What safety precautions are in place that would say there's no chance that one of the patients we're treating is going to run out to the street and get hit, or whatever the reasons for the code are. And if the city planner has any additional comments on why it was zoned a particular way and how is there any way of ensuring that nobody's going to get hurt by doing it this way? And I fully admit I am naive on the topic, and I don't know all the logistics and how this project will work. I think the project and the applicant we want in the city. I'm not questioning that. I don't want to see any kids get in the hospital.
Can I briefly touch on that?
Absolutely.
I'd like to point out that IO is actually right next to what we're doing. This is certainly a safe zoning for this area. It's essentially one commercial subtype to another commercial subtype. It's not a major change. The real difficulty in doing this was just that one of the properties didn't quite meet the square footage standards, and so that's the reason why we had to go through this,
Thank you.
this process.
Ms. Devine, would you take the timer down off the map so that...
Thank you.
And to follow up to Ms. Townsend, is every other parcel on this stretch of Forest Street between the subway and whatever that is, Carver Road, are they all zoned the way that the applicant is asking to be zoned?
No.
No?
The IO zoning that is in the area is the Modern Maturity Center, which is a little bit further down Route 8, and the school campus, Booker T. Washington and William Henry Middle School, which is where she's got the cursor right now. So the property that is closest to and adjacent to the applicant's property is zoned CPO.
It is worth mentioning that probably 70–80% of that block is owned by FaithWorks LLC. So, and we are not planning on doing any construction there. So we want this to be a long-term asset to the community. But, you know, if you guys approve this, 2 years later we move out, there's no damage done. There's no risk to this.
Thank you, sir. Any other? Mr. Hutchison?
Regarding to the homes, how many students would be in each home?
Yes. So if you look at Site A, which is that center one, the large one, used to be a doctor's office. We'll be putting 6 in there. We actually have capacity for 7, but for the comfort of the students, we'll go for 6. In Site C, we're looking at 2. That will be the female house. And then Site A will have the optional capacity for an additional 2 if Department of Provincial Health Services needs it, but for the most part, it'll be office.
Do you have an age group that you focus on?
Yes, sir. 12 to 17.
And what?
12 to 17.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
That corner there
Yes.
is a hazard within itself.
Yes, sir.
You got the light there. You got a crosswalk there.
Yes, sir.
And corner with the subway sandwiching the side of it. What precautions are you going to have out there to protect those children?
I'm glad you asked. This was a major topic in the prior meeting, and it's a major topic that we've discussed with the state. If you look extending from the rear of Site A out towards that IO zone where the school is, there is actually you can kind of see it, it blends into the Site C. Yeah, you got it right there. That is actually a driveway, and we're going to be redoing that driveway so it is safe to enter and exit from that side, so that we were not entering onto that intersection. Furthermore, when we go out onto Forest Ave, staff, when they're driving in vans, more than one student or during hours of heavy traffic, will only be allowed to take a right from that location. They will not cross Forest Street. They'll not cross those lines of traffic. So definitely safety was a major concern. I'll make sure that was taken care of before we agreed to this site with the state.
How long was it? What was your child?
Well, not technically nothing. We do have supervision there, 2 staff at each house, which means anywhere from 4 to 6 staff on site during daytime hours. That staffing will actually be up to 10 or 12 during the main shift. Keep in mind, these students will be at a education center right there. We have a high-tech classroom site set up where we're working with the Department of Education. There will be a teacher provided by the state working with these kids. This is a structured environment. So we are watching them. In addition, the main points of entering and exiting each of the buildings is going to be the rear of the buildings, which is why we call it the campus environment, because all of those rear parts of the buildings come out into the same parking lot yard area, which would be used for recreation, and that will in turn have a fence around the entire, sectioning off the entire property. So safety is our top, so on the back side, yes. The front side's going to be a lot more. With staff, they're monitoring, staff are going to be on the ground floor of each building, so.
This is not true that on that road we have an elementary school. On that road we have a middle school. On that, on Salisbury Road we have an elementary school, and there has been a big problem with students getting hurt. I'm just wondering why students that are more mature, age 12 to 17, would all of a sudden be more in danger than elementary and students, some of which have the same problems.
We believe that they won't necessarily be more at risk, but we're not taking that chance. We're providing high level. The state has not desired this to be a locked down facility. They want it to be an open facility, and the children that they are going to be giving us are ones that they deem acceptable for this kind of open facility. We are still taking security seriously, and supervision seriously.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Williams, then Mr. Carson.
Answer your question. They will have issues that might not be jeopardized if they were younger in a regular school system as a regular kid. They will have these issues. My concern is, and I'll be real clear about this,
the way a secured facility is operated and run, I would like to emphasize that the RFP that the state put out did not want a locked facility, regardless of what facilities we found. This is what they want. We are one of 3 programs that were, organizations that were accepted to do this. One in each county. We are the county choice. All of them are doing models like this. This is a new model. It is based upon high engagement for education, for recreational activities, for getting these youth engaged with families, with teachers. It's not about securing them. It's about engaging with them. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what the state's trying to do, and we believe we can do it safely and effectively. And
Mr. Persa?
Piggybacking off of Mr. Anderson's comment about the elementary school, it's effectively next door. It's on the other side of, I think, Carver Road there. There's a school. In looking, kind of giving you an idea of what you guys are talking, I'm looking at these satellite maps of this thing. I see the little alley that everybody's referencing there where you say that's going to be the in and out, which is basically looks like to me a dirt driveway from this perspective, but that's fine. Are the dirt driveways that are access to parcels C and A and B, are they getting curbed off so that you won't have cars going through A, B, and C and basically force the only way in and out being that little alleyway? Because it looks like to me that there's still curbing access to people. It's a house, so people just pull up, drive in, and they're there. And the elementary school doesn't. You have one way, or you have controlled. You have ways in and ways out that are controlled, so that there's no chance that kids are going to get
I think Mrs. Townsend can answer the question.
run down on that.
I guess I want to clarify something that we made a point of discussing during the DAC process. One, this is an application for rezoning. So before they can establish the use, they would need to come through an administrative site plan process, and we
Okay.
would look at ingress, egress, all of those things. However, the zoning ordinance prohibits crossing through a zone where a use is not permitted to access a use. So technically, under the zoning ordinance, that cannot be their principal access. They would have to continue to have access through those driveways at the houses.
So the little alleyway then isn't really an option?
Not a legal option, not to say it wouldn't get used, but it's
Uh-huh.
not, it can't be their
Okay.
means of access.
All right, well, that's what I'm just asking questions.
All right. Any other questions? Any other comments, Mrs. Townsend?
I'm just going to correct some of what I said earlier. I think mine went on sleep mode earlier. So I had corrected myself and said that the property was zoned C1A. It is currently CPO. The adjacent property on Carver Road is C1A. So the comprehensive plan shows all of that area as commercial. The CPO is kind of the lower grade or lower intensity office commercial, and the institutional and office is more typically for larger offices and institutional uses, things like Bay Health, the schools, things like that. So I just wanted to clarify my misspeaking on the zoning.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? In favor of this? So come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Yes. My name is Talano Anderson. I'm an officer with FaithWorks LLC. We're the owners of the property. I'm speaking on behalf of and on favor of the application. I think this is a good project. I think that it is good for the community. I think it is good for the children. It's good for the people that are in looking for jobs. I don't think there is a concern that's not being addressed. There were 3 state inspectors at the property today, and they've made numerous trips down there. There's another one scheduled for tomorrow. Every possible contingency concerning safety, everything concerning their alarm systems and all their criteria that they're going over with PSI has been addressed. The educational requirements, the transportation requirements, I mean, all of these things are being really, really looked at hard. They shared with us today that this is the first time a program like this has been in the state of Delaware in 20 years. They've been farmed out to other states, and that's what they see as really the tragedy. For the families, for the families not to be able to get with these children, to come into counseling, having to travel to Maryland and other places in other states, maybe even Pennsylvania, I'm not sure where they are now, but not in Delaware. So they're piloting this program, trying to get it off the ground to help these children. Now, I think the application, I think it should be supported, and I'm going to ask the council to do so for this reason. We don't get opportunities like this to make an impact in the community very often. These are good paying jobs. These are not entry-level, low-income jobs. These are good jobs for professionals with upward mobility. These are children that need help. As stated previously, we own 70% of the block right there. We have families with children with special needs, mental challenges, handicaps around that entire block. So as far as we're concerned, I mean, nothing's going to stop them from running out the door and across the street as well. So I think that taking that into consideration, knowing that there are a lot of highly paid state representatives or state employees that are also doing that as a part of their primary job, I think that that's something that we should consider. So our on-site inspection with the fire marshal and the building inspector, our interaction with the planning staff, the development advisory committee, the planning commission, all of this has been really positive and really favorable. This is not a simple task. It's not something that we're taking lightly, but we think it's beneficial to the community as a whole. So I simply suggest and hope and recommend that you all approve the application as presented. The bulk standard consideration, I look at it as a requirement, but it's a technicality. The lot should be 10,000 square feet, but it's 8,276 square feet. But to say, well, we're just not going to do it because you're short 1,700 some odd square feet, I don't think that that would be fair for all the reasons previously mentioned. So I think my time's up. So unless you have any questions for me, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Question for Ms. Townsend, piggybacking off of Mr. Anderson's comment. Would this application be here if this was the difference between 8,500 and 10,000 square foot? Is that the
No.
only reason we're looking at this, or is there?
No, the use is
substantive-
not permitted in the
All right,
CPO
okay.
zone.
I mean, I don't want to get confused. We want the applicant. I think that's a positive step for the city. I don't think anybody's questioning that. I think we just want, when we say yes, we just don't want to,
Right.
we're not experts in this, so we're
The
relying on.
rezoning is necessary to allow the use.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mrs. Williams?
I don't have any more questions, sir. Thank you.
May I?
No, mine is to her. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may have a seat.
The concern is land use. The reason that we don't have, and they said this was going to be a first for Delaware, is that these children in past times have gone out of state to Pennsylvania and to Maryland to very large facilities with tremendous resources and huge grounds available to the kids. It has been a hardship, I agree, to parents, but that's why they were sent to other states, because those states had those facilities. Those facilities made themselves available to Delaware, and we don't have the population base for those kinds of resources. So yes, PSI has been here for a long time, outpatient services only. This is their first shot at residential in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Hare.
Just one question for the gentleman. You had something you wanted to say. What was it?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Just the initial point that Mrs. Williams made, that the property was separated by the Subway restaurant. That's actually not the case. You do not have to cross that property to come onto this campus. It is actually joined by 50 feet of property between lots, I think it's C and A. So there's no way, no requirement to go onto or to cross that property or to go onto that property.
But there's no fencing.
Well, like he said, the property is going to be fenced as well.
Can't be fenced in the front.
No, not in the front, ma'am. No
Right.
property can be
Right.
fenced in the front.
So the property can be, Subway property can be accessed by foot.
I mean, it could, but it's not a requirement to
Absolutely.
utilize the
Right,
campus.
and that was my
only.
biggest concern, which is a supervision concern, because we've been doing this for 40 years, and in supervision, you have to take rules seriously.
Understand. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
All right. Anybody else want to speak in favor of granting this zoning? Seeing none, is there anyone who wants to speak against it? Anyone who would like to speak against it? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What's your pleasure, council?
Just another question.
Mr. Person?
To city planner, has the city reviewed any of the ongoing inspections that have been occurring on the premises?
No, our chief building inspector and fire marshal did a walkthrough. There are a number of improvements that would need to be made, including sprinklering of at least one building and perhaps others once
That'd
they
be part
get
of the
more
zoning
details.
process and the
It would be
CO
part of the-
process?
right.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that for tonight?
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Hutchison?
Just a comment. Having had the opportunity for the last 25 years to sit on a board dealing with special needs, the program that we have 15 acres plus. I love your program. I absolutely hate your location. I am deeply concerned about safety. And I have a lot of experience dealing with special needs. And all I'm saying to you, the program, the concept, it works. But when it comes to location, and I look at what's around you, and I look at the traffic pattern, there's no way in this world that I can sit here in good faith and support your request. And it's a safety issue. And it's a shame, because quite frankly, your program and the people involved, and I know all about the kinds of people and the kinds of training and everything else. Been doing it for 25 years, sitting on a board and watching it being run. And I can assure you, there is tremendous amount of challenge that comes with it. And we've been in the business for 90 years. So I think we have a pretty good track record. So I say to you, I love your program, I love the concept. I would love to see a different location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Anyone, any other comments, council? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of council, Mr. Hare?
Just one comment. This was all vetted through the planning commission, right?
Yes.
And they went through all this, and they recommended the rezoning.
They did. You have the draft minutes, so you can.
Okay, so I guess
see the
that's
discussion.
why we have the planning commission, right?
On matters of rezoning, they make a
And I
recommendation
think
to
with the
council. It's ultimately council's decision.
I think, as the gentleman was saying, with this particular site, the people are probably going to be a lot more attentive and pay a lot more attention to what's going on in this site, since this is their first one. And they still have to go through getting the certificate of occupancy and everything. Okay, that's just wanted to make sure.
Mrs. Townsend, anybody on the planning commission that has the 90 years of experience that Murphy School has, or the 40 years of experience that Aiden Dover has?
There is one member of the planning commission who has experience in that area.
Is it cumulative to that amount?
I'm not certain of his years of experience.
I doubt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. It's a pleasure of council, Mr. Purse.
Can I ask one more question? What's the recommendation of the city staff?
The city staff.
What's the official position?
The original recommendation of the city staff
Uh-huh.
was in favor of the 2 Salisbury Road parcels, but not the Forest Street parcel, again, because of the size of the parcel. And it wasn't just, 8,200 square feet versus 10,000. It was 50 feet in lot width versus 100 feet in lot width. So, the IO zone is really more for kind of larger institutional uses. So that was the nature of the staff recommendation. The other 2 parcels, when you put them together, do meet the bulk standards, maybe not individually, but taken together.
So the city is more or less rolling out the red carpet for A and B, but prefer not to use C for this use?
We think that in terms of the way zoning should work, where you look at zoning blocks and having contiguous zoning and conforming zoning, that it does not lend itself to those attributes.
Okay.
Mr. Slavin.
Thank you, Council President. In keeping with my role as the council member who is trying to keep things moving along, I will put out a motion to accept the recommendation of the Zoning Commission and approve the rezoning.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. Any questions on the motion?
Can I offer an amendment?
You may indeed.
It's 9 o'clock, so we might as well keep going. My amendment, if offered or if permitted, would be to amend it to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation, but to parcels A and B, not to parcel C, so that it conforms with the City Planning Office's recommendation on use. So effectively, we'd accept A and B for that purpose, but not C.
So A and B and not C.
Can I offer a very quick comment?
Basically, yeah, basically to amend Councilman Slavin's application to modify the Planning Commission recommendation to make it the Planning Department's recommendation and to be parcels A and B and not C. But I think it's fair to ask the applicants how that would impact. I think I heard 2 students would be in C, so
Go ahead, sir.
We've discussed this with DPVH, and because that is, the males and females do need to be separated, if site C is excluded, then that would effectively kill this project.
Okay, sir. All right, we're voting on the amendment, which would make it parcel A and B, but not C.
There wasn't a second to the...
I would withdraw the amendment if that's,
Thank you.
to me, it's a
The
package
amendment has been
deal.
withdrawn. The motion before you is to approve the staff recommendation. Any questions on the motion?
Zoning Commissioner.
Planning Commission.
Excuse, I
Any
have a
questions on the
question.
motion?
The staff's recommendation was A and B. The zoning's recommendation is A,
It's
B,
all
and
of it.
C.
Yes,
And why didn't the zoning commission go along with you on C?
because all of the parcels are needed for the
Roger.
use to go forward.
Gotcha. Thank you.
basically the applicant pulls out and won't do any of them
Right.
if it's not all 3.
Right.
point of order, I believe if we vote against the recommendation of the Planning Commission, do we have to state a reason for it?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Any further questions?
Am I allowed to ask?
Go ahead.
If the city says no, how difficult is it to find another location? I mean, this is a question for you guys. Is there another location you guys looked at and just didn't choose, or is it because you own this and that's why you want to use it because it's convenient?
No, we don't own this. We've searched high and low. This was the site we found that met our needs in terms of location, proximity to local schools, which we were going to be tying into, proximity to the YMCA and other recreational facilities, which are also integral to creating a program like this. This was the only site we found that met our needs. And so we are hanging our hat, and the state is hanging their hat on this site.
Thank you, sir. The question before you is to approve Planning Commission recommendation. I would remind you, if you are voting against the Planning Commission recommendation, you must give your reasons for voting against it. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Mr. Anderson?
No, because I trust the expertise of Mrs. Williams.
Mr. Dixon?
No.
Reasons?
The reason of safety of those kids.
Mr. Persa?
I would defer to the city planning department. I think the city has established that it should be A and B for a safe reason, for well-founded reasons when they set up the city zoning code. And I think the burden should be on the applicant to show that those reasons set forth by the city have not been satisfied with regards to parcel C. So my preference would be to approve A and B, but not C. So, no.
Thank you, sir.
Regrettably.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
No, due to safety and the problems with supervision.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
No, public safety issue.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask myself? I will vote no from a public safety issue. And the vote would be 6-2. Motion fails.
Do you need a motion to deny the ordinance? Or does it just say?
No, this suffices, does it not?
No, I think it,
Did we do
I
it?
think the vote on it was for rezoning, so I think that's
That
right.
takes
So a
care
no
of it.
vote on?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Item number 5, 2-month review of the violation of dangerous building ordinance. Property located at 1370 College Road, owned by Sarah Jones. Mrs. Townsend.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move we postpone this till next meeting, this item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dixon. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 5 is deferred until next meeting. Item number 6B. Mr. Slater.
I believe that Councilman Hutchison pulled off 6A.
Yes,
off
I
the
did.
agenda.
6A, I'm sorry, 6A.
I think it was a recommendation as a result of the committee report on December the 8th that the overview of the 1988 consent decree take no action. And what I would like to ask, that we allow a follow-up, allowing the city of Dover with the council president to open up a dialogue with Mr. Cecil Wilson, the president of the NAACP at the time, and to see if there's any opportunity for an agreement regarding the consent decree.
All right.
Is that a motion?
Is that in the form of a motion?
I would second that.
Mrs. Williams, second. Any questions on the motion? Mr. Anderson?
Mr. President, I cannot support reopening the consent decree. I think at this particular time it does not serve any useful purpose. I believe that the city is working well. It has right now. The consent decree is an item that is extraordinarily sensitive even today, and the people that I've heard in the district say they're very skeptical of it being open at this point in time.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? Mr. Slavin?
I'm going to have to ask the city clerk to kind of test her memory here, but I believe this action was recommended from Legislative Finance and Administration maybe 2 months prior to this meeting that's in the minutes here. And with the caveat that, no disrespect to Mr. Wilson, but it wasn't just Mr. Wilson, there were other parties that we wanted to begin this dialogue with. So it may be that this action has already taken place, or the authorization for the action has already taken place.
Thank you, Mr.
As I recall, I think we voted it down.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to make a comment? I see you with your hand in the air.
Cecil Wilson, 130 Brandywine. Okay.
As tired as we are.
Right. Councilman Slavin, the parties that we're talking about, myself along with the National NAACP, no one else can step forward to communicate what we're talking about. So when we talk about a dialogue with me, I would definitely contact the National to send in a representative to sit down and have an open dialogue with the city. And it's not about me, it's about all of us. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate it. Mr. Persin?
Does Mr. Hutchison's motion cost us any money? As in, do we got to send in lawyers, and how expensive does this get to have a chit-chat conversation?
Well, I'd like to think that we can do this. We need to sit down with Mr. Wilson to begin with. And as he just indicated, we need to expand it. But I do not think at this point, and maybe after discussions with Mr. Wilson, we may need to have, in the final conclusion, attorneys involved. But quite frankly, I think this is something that we can open up a dialogue to see if there's any interest in pursuing this. And I have had some discussions on this, and I think there is at least an opportunity to look at this.
I mean, theoretically and philosophically, the day is going to come and we're going to have to tweak it. I mean, it may be in the year 2100, but we're not going to be locked into this exact system for the next 500 years. So the day is going to come when it's going to have to change. Are we to that point now? I don't want to spend a bunch of money on something that might not happen for 50 years. That's all I'm asking. It's someday it's going to change. It may not be today. And I'm not saying it has to change. I don't want to do a fishing expedition.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Hare.
I would think it would be good to open the discussions just to make, if for no other reason, clarification for what it is, because there's a lot of people that don't know what it is. It doesn't mean change it, just the history of it, yeah. And like Hutch said, talk to Mr. Wilson, and after talking with him, I said, okay, that clears it all up, and we don't have to do anything. I mean, it would give clarification for a lot of things, a lot of people.
Mr. Slavin.
I appreciate what Councilman Harris is saying. I also think that this issue is entangled in the issue of form of government that we're about to discuss in a couple of items. And I don't think we can get to any answers on what our form of government should be in the future without having had this conversation about the consent decree, because it does bind us to the form of government that we have.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a total.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Mr. Hare.
Just what I'm saying. I don't have a total clear understanding of what it is. So I think it would be good, even if we put off the discussion of the full-time mayor, and we meet with Mr. Wilson or whoever else he would recommend to come with him before we go national with it, and just get a clear understanding of what it is on everything. And then, do we want him to make the next phone call? Then we can decide. Good.
All right. Let's move forward. No more questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Dixon?
No.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr.
I'll
Slade?
talk.
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 6-2. All right, next item on the agenda is the property tax governance compensation policy number 9, removed from the consent agenda early. Mr. Slavin.
Just a point of clarification, was 6B1 also removed from the consent agenda?
6B1, compensation, I guess that would be, you just said 6.
Well, specifically, B2.
B2 is what you're interested in.
I had made a notation that 6B1.
You just said 6A and B, so there was no, do you want to go ahead and?
6B1, just to close the loop on this,
Go ahead.
includes 3 items which were part of the fiscal reform package, numbers 6, 7, and 8 for those keeping track. All of these items, after discussion, were tabled by committee on a motion that I made because it was determined that these were really not in keeping with good faith negotiations during our union negotiations.
Okay, so the entire package was tabled?
Just the 3
Okay.
compensation policies were.
Okay, then, but B2 was not?
No, I'll get to B2 in 1 second.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then I withdraw my request for discussion.
Well, then we'd have to vote on it since we removed it from the consent. Item number 6B1 for adoption, since it was removed from the consent agenda. Any questions? I need a motion to approve 6B1.
Council President, I move that we table the issue.
Second.
It's tabled, moved by table by Mr. Slavin, seconded by Mr. Hare. All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 6B2.
Thank you, Council President. This is the issue about property tax governance. It was a proposal put forward as part of the reform package. It was policy number 9. The council shall not raise the property tax rate more than 9.5% without first holding a referendum on the proposed tax increase. This provision would not apply in those years when a revenue-neutral adjustment to the tax rate is required because of property revaluation. This was again revised by council during their meeting of September 22nd to include that there's a provision in the drafting of the ordinance that council may vacate the provisions in times of unforeseen emergencies with the stipulation that, and also with the stipulation that the ordinance be reviewed 4 years after implementation. The committee, Legislative Finance and Administration Committee, has forwarded the proposal to council without a recommendation for the purposes of having a full discussion by City Council.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Williams.
Since this is of such grave magnitude for so many of us on council, I would respectfully suggest that this, request that this get tabled so that we can give it the time it needs.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Motion on the floor to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor of the tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Madam Clerk, call roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
No.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes. Motion is tabled.
Council President, that concludes the report from the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee for December 8th.
Thank you.
Move that we accept the report.
That's success.
There's no motion accepted. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Anderson, second. Mrs. Williams.
Is this discussion?
No, I
No.
forgot. We got
6F.
We still have to do F.
We need to move that to another time.
Wait a minute. We need to seriously talk about Mr. Slavin's scope on Leg and Finn, because it's becoming the council agenda. I would, with that in mind, I would also make a motion that item F be tabled for more deliberate consideration.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hare. Any questions on the motion?
Why is it being tabled?
That could be a long discussion.
Because retired Mr. Person, this may get real long.
Mrs. Williams, would you be amenable to changing the wording instead of tabling to defer?
Absolutely.
Pending the outcome of
Absolutely.
discussions with Mr. Wilson and others? and for the previous item as well.
Second.
Yes, I'm sorry, I know the clerk doesn't like the word table.
Without objections, a motion is deferred.
Objection.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Mercifully, yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion carries 7-6-2. All right. Now, we are on item number
8.
Now we need to accept your report, Councilman Slavin. Motion to accept your report, which you've made. Is there a second
Another
to
motion
accept?
this evening, is that it? Move that we accept the report of legislative.
Second by Mr. Dixon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, item number 8, evaluations.
No care.
Sorry you lose. Item number 8, the evaluation of bids 8A for the General Scott switchgear. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you. The electric department is proceeding with their capital improvement plan. As part of that, the replacement of the General Scott switchgear was scheduled for this year. Staff prepared all the bid package, put it out to public advertisement. 7 bids were submitted. Our consulting engineer, Power Consulting Engineers Incorporated, evaluated the bids and for meeting all the specifications as well as qualifying the lowest bidder. Recommendation is to award the contract to Power Electronics Incorporated in the amount of $560,975.27. This is one component of the complete project. Total project budget is $1.137 million. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Hare?
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hare, second by Mr. Hutchison. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Persa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Bonar?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. 8B, evaluation of the bids for the Westover connector. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you. Staff has been working with the Department of Transportation regarding the construction of the Westover connector project that has been under design for a number of years. As part of this project, staff had proposed to relocate and upgrade the city's water and sewer infrastructure within the project area. Bids were advertised to the public on an invitation to bid under ITB 150018 PW. The bids were opened on December 3rd, 2014. Received 4 bids. All of the bids were above the projected project budget. The contractor or the consulting engineer has reviewed the bids and found that there were 3 areas where prices were significantly higher. One is the pipe installation estimate was approximately $100 a foot less than the bid price. Traffic control was approximately 33% of the bid price. Finally, the well pointing estimate was 65% of the bid price. The conclusion of the consulting engineers is that the market conditions have changed and thus resulting in the higher prices. Staff has proposed to alter the CIP as shown on page 2 to bring the project budgets up to what would be needed to construct the proposed utility relocations under the City of Dover Westover Connector project. We are recommending moving forward with awards to Teal Construction in the amount of $1,256,988 and amending all the project budgets attached on page 2. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Hare?
The Westover connector.
Yes.
So if we do this, is this definitely going to move ahead and happen?
The bids have been...
I mean, the whole connector.
Yes, yeah, the project is ready to go to construction. I believe DelDOT has awarded bids. I'm not sure who the low bidder is, but I know the electric department has begun relocation of equipment down near Rodney Village, and this is necessary for us to move forward. Yes, it is going to move forward. I think it's about 18 months to 22 months construction.
So we will be able to get from the west side to the south side in our lifetime.
You will be able
If
to
we don't-
get from
We don't
the,
die
yeah,
tomorrow.
provided you make it to the end of construction, you will be able to go from Salisbury Road at Hazelville Road, North Street, all the way down to the south end of Rodney Village, which is currently known as Charles Polk Road, and exit out onto 13 in the heavy traffic of Camden.
Into heavy bottleneck
Yes.
traffic all the
Yes,
way
but
down. Gotcha.
you'll be able to do that
We'll
quickly.
have a lot of police to direct the traffic.
Sounds like Rehoboth.
All right, Mr. Persa.
The question relates to, I believe I heard that one of the original estimates for this project was $700,000-800,000, but the bids are in at 1.2.
Correct.
And we've had a history of having projects be way underestimated and come in a lot higher. Now, granted, all these bids are the same, so I think 1.2 is probably the realistic number, but is the difference in the 0.7 and 1.2 million based on the changing in scope? And that had the city gone back and re-evaluated their estimates based on the enlarged scope, would the city's estimate also come in the ballpark of 1.2?
There were 6 manholes added during the scope, over the original estimate, which is not significant in this project. So there was a minor revision to the scope, but the significant increase in costs, the consultant felt was related to the bid environment.
Is there any chance that this price changes moving forward? In other words, 6 months from now, are we going to get another 800,000 that we didn't envision being, since we're already $500,000 off on our estimate, is there any chance that there's another $1 million coming that we don't know about?
Not for this project.
Okay. The type of construction is relatively certain
Yep.
and unlikely to
We're
modify.
replacing pipe from point A to point B.
Okay.
Any other question? Pleasure of council. Need a motion? Mr.
Move
Slavin.
the approval of staff recommendation and award the contract to Teal Construction in the amount of $1,256,988.
Moved by Mr. Slavin, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Hare. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Persa? Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item 9, the acceptance of the SCADA equipment technology upgrade for water. Sole service vendor, Mr. Koenig.
Thank you. This is a water capital improvement project. We are recommending it be issued as a sole vendor. We've been working with WellTech for a number of years on the SCADA system at the water treatment plant. They have identified in their package the sole vendor request and argument that they be designated as the sole vendor. Mr. Sisson at the water treatment plant has been working with this vendor. We are recommending that a 3-year contract be awarded, multi-year contract be awarded. Staff has budgeted over the next 3 fiscal years, FY 15, 16, and 17, a total of $249,000. The proposal came in at $241,090.88, and we're recommending approval for the 3-year amount of that amount. Thank you.
Any questions of staff? Mrs. Williams?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Slavin.
Just a,
Any further questions on the motion, Mr. Slavin?
I just want to highlight this. This is an example of a 3-year contract for which technically there is no funding for fiscal 16 or 17 that's been set aside for. This is the same issue that we went through previously. Just wanted to use it for illustration purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Mr. Anderson?
I did have a question for Mr. Koenig. Now, what is the difference between them being designated as a sole source vendor and not being designated as one?
In this case, all of the equipment that's there was put in by WellTech, and it's proprietary in that sense for that vendor. So if we were to bid this out as just a regular contract, we would be replacing all of the equipment that's in there because it would be compatible with a new brand or a new vendor. So in this case, we usually have the vendor indicate that they serve a specific territory or have franchise rights, and that's what they've provided for us. They're the exclusive vendor of this type of technology in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none. Pleasure, council.
Already been moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded, sorry. Any further questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Ursa?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 13, council members' announcements. Mr. Purcell.
I guess among one item I'd like to clean up from earlier on when we approved the Cecil Wilson olive branch, I guess, or us reaching out to Mr. Wilson. Oh, never mind, he's right here. What I guess in voting yes is I would like piggybacking off what Mr. Harris said. I think it's a good idea for us to reach out and have a discussion and educate ourselves on what happened in 1985 to kind of justify that. I think that makes sense. When we passed it or we voted yes, it was not in an adversarial fashion at all. I think it's good to reach out, have a conversation, learn what in the world happened back whenever it was, 1985 or so, and what prompted it, which probably went back another 50 years prior to that. So, but us reaching out, having a conversation is not meant to be an adversarial or an enemy type of situation where we're out to change anything. That's I just want to clarify that. We moved on before I could say it. And then the kind of other issue is I just would, for purposes of making a public announcement, it's my intent not to file for re-election for the April election in February. So I won't be a candidate for the 2nd District representing South Dover. I appreciate very much everybody in the city who's worked with me over the last 3 years and helped me reach out to other people in the community. I've enjoyed the process. I'm not leaving because of any dislike of the process. It's an interesting way of working in the community and getting along with everybody else in the city. One of my goals and one of my objectives when I came in 2012 was to offer a reasonable and a responsible way of, or responsible and reasonable voice in government. Just because I disagreed with one of you doesn't mean I always voted against you. I usually tried to find a bridge to work out a reasonable solution that would make everybody in the city happy. Granted, this is quasi-political in the sense that it's nonpartisan, but I view it more as a homeowners association. We live next to each other. We all live in the city together. We're all in the same districts. We got to get along and make everybody work. And from my perspective, it made no difference to me whether you were a blue, red, whatever in the world color, political affiliation you were. If you had an issue in your neighborhood, I tried to help. And in my experience, everybody else in the city tried to help. If I called another councilman, they were always receptive, willing to help out. Go visit somebody in the community, even at 11 o'clock at night if need be in certain cases, Bill. But from my perspective, and for purposes of helping everybody else, because I have been contacted by individuals who are interested in running, and I feel good the fact that they've all reached out to me with the intent of they were not certain they were going to run if I did run, or if I did work to be a candidate, which makes me in part feel I did a good job to the sense that you weren't looking to fire me right away. But for purposes of letting everybody else in the city know, or at least all the other potential candidates, my intent is not to file for re-election, and I'll conclude my term in May. So thanks to everybody within the city, and we still have 3 months to go. So if you need any more help, just give me a call.
Well, we'll exact our pound of flesh. Mrs. Williams.
Mr. Perzo, I for one will miss you, because I thought you brought a lot to council, a whole lot.
I'm not disappearing.
I know.
I just don't get a vote.
I understand. I also wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Denise over here on a very, very impressive accomplishment of being certified as a city clerk. Congratulations.
That gives me one less thing to talk about. Thank you, Bill.
I just want to say to Mr. Perzik that you're not going to miss those 11 o'clock calls to go over to the church on Mitchell Road?
You learn a lot by doing that.
Well, you will be missed.
Mr. Hutchins.
Adam, I just want to say thanks. It's been fun working with you, and the nice thing, you were always there to listen to the issues. You always had the forethought of the city in mind. So I thank you. It's been nice work.
That's our number one reason for being here, is to listen. If we don't listen, we aren't reporting what we hear within our communities, and that's all we are. We're a conduit for letting everybody else in the city know this is what I'm hearing on our side of town. And to the extent, if in the future, if you need help, you need a PowerPoint presentation to fix a big problem, give me a call.
Also, it's 4 months, not 3.
Say that again?
You got 4 months to go, not 3.
Whatever it is, May.
You're not getting out that.
May 12th.
Thank you. Tim, Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
I definitely say it's always a pleasure to work with you, and hopefully, it appears we can keep your expertise around in some committee sometime, and we won't let you get away, because you are a tremendous asset to the city, like you have been. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Adam, I will add to everyone else's accolades. You brought a sense of reason when some of us didn't seem to be able to find reason on several occurrences. And I will say that I have been particularly proud to have worked with you. I think that you've brought a lot to the table. I think that you have managed to balance family, business, and council very admirably. And we'll miss you, but we are not going to let you go. You rest assured of that. The other thing that I would like to publicly announce is that, you know, many of you that had heard me say that I didn't intend to run again. After a lot of discussion with my wife, members of the community, I did file for re-election this morning at 8:30 in the city clerk's office. And there's a lot of work left to be done, and I hope to be part of it. So I'll look forward, hopefully, to being back with you after the election in April. The last announcement tonight, tomorrow,
One more here. One more.
Mrs. Williams.
Sorry. Since you made that announcement, I would like to say that I am also planning to run again, and will be filing as soon as the clerk's office returns on Friday.
Good. Thank you very
My
much.
staff
Mrs.
thanks you
Williams.
for waiting, because they're doing the petitions.
That's very good. I would remind people that wish to file, the filing deadline for the position of mayor for the 2015 regular municipal election is Friday, January 20th, 2015. I'm sorry, 30th of 2015, at 4:30 in the afternoon. The filing deadline for city council seats is Friday, February 13th, 2015 at 4:30 p.m. All filing information is available on the city's website at cityofdover.com, or if they wish to stop in the city clerk's office, I'm sure they'll be happy to explain things to them. Last thing we want to announce tonight, as you all know, or may have read in the paper, there has been a selection of the city of Dover along with the city of Seaford and the city of Wilmington in regard to downtown development grants. As you all know, the governor got a piece of legislation passed to help downtowns in the amount of about $7 million. The governor will have a formal announcement of Dover's portion of that tomorrow downtown on the plaza.
The community room at the Bayard Plaza building.
Okay, but then we changed that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And that's at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, those of you that wish to attend. Nothing else to add to the agenda. We do have an executive session immediately following this meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive.
Second.
All right. Well, any questions on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Give us a few minutes. We're going to take a couple.